We're back for another pod, back before the Sooners head to Tulsa this weekend, and we're back with Todd Lisenbee. Sellout Crowd's Todd Lisenbee for the 6th episode of the Letterman Jacket podcast. Todd, your favorite number 6 of all time, who would it be?
Baker Mayfield.
That's a good one.
Maybe Mark Martin when he drove the Viagra car back in the day on the
NASCAR. I wouldn't have thought. My mind would not have gone there. It's easy. Yeah. Bill Russell is a good starting point.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a Celtics fan, so obviously Bill Russell. Dr. J was a 6, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah.
Quarterback's born 6. I'm trying to think. It's a good number.
I mean, Mayfield's a 6. I can't think of any other ones off the top of my head. I'm sure people are gonna in the comments. Hopefully, they leave a bunch of comments and they tell us how stupid we are.
Yeah, Mark Sanchez, Jets. That's where my mind went.
Well, that's probably not a good 6. Although right now the Jets might take Mark Sanchez at quarterback.
I think they absolutely would because I don't know, Zach Wilson. Maybe if he wears number 6, things will look a bit different. But I don't know. Well, Todd, we're not here to talk about the Jets. We could talk about the Jets. What we're really here to talk about is Oklahoma football. Sooners head to Tulsa 2-0. 26-point favorites against the Golden Hurricane this weekend. First sellout crowd. No overlap.
I see what you did there.
You liked it? Well, they've got a sellout there. 30,000 people supposed to be at Chapman Stadium. First time since 2009 they've sold that place out. So it's a big deal for Tulsa. I spoke with Rick Dixon, the AD, yesterday, and kind of got a sense of just what all this means. They feel like it's a culmination, a bit of, if they've been down the last few years, this to them feels like a step on their road back. But what does this weekend mean for the Sooners? And what do we need to learn about them after, we've seen 2 games, we've seen Arkansas State and SMU. What are you looking for this weekend? What do we need to learn still about these Sooners?
Well, how about a little irony for you, Eli? You mentioned the number 6. This is the 6th episode of the Letterman Jacket. Game number 1, OU was a 36-point favorite against Arkansas State. Game number 2, a 16-point favorite against SMU, and now a 26-point favorite against Tulsa. Look, I think it's one of those that it should go a certain way, and I don't see any reason why it doesn't go that way, and I don't think that's necessarily a shot at Tulsa. I think Kevin Wilson's going to do a good job there. I think they've already probably looked at times a little more capable early on than people thought. Didn't just get absolutely boat raced by Washington, which is an incredibly tough road test. And let's be honest, for Tulsa, a bowl game is great, but hosting Oklahoma in your stadium is something that doesn't happen. Like, it's a once in a generation type thing now for that school. So I think there's going to be a lot for them to play for in this game. Always it's a talking point whether Oklahoma or Oklahoma State plays Tulsa. You've got a lot of kids who felt like maybe they got overlooked and didn't get recruited by Oklahoma. So that always plays in, but it shouldn't be too tough of a test for Oklahoma. I think they're going to be better across the board at every position than Tulsa. It's just a matter of, do we see that play out on the field, right? Do we see that talent level win out, or do we see guys not play up to their potential in a game where you may be looking ahead towards conference play? So I think the line's about right, to be honest with you. I could see this game being Oklahoma winning by 40. I could also see it being Tulsa getting like a backdoor cover and it's a 3-touchdown game or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple weeks ago before the Arkansas State game, we talked about this non-conference run with all due respect to all 3 opponents, but being about Oklahoma versus Oklahoma. And in some senses, they've passed tests to this point. I mean, it's early, and we'll get to the defense, but like the defense has passed some early tests. They've shown us a bit of what's different about them this year and given some promising signs. Andrell Anthony has proven early on he's going to be able to factor into this aerial attack, no problem. But there's still questions, and that's where maybe not. Maybe the outcome this weekend we can predict today, whether it's OU covering that spread and then some, or if it's closer than we think. I think we'd be surprised if we were here in a week talking about an OU loss. That's nothing on Tulsa, but OU is expected to go there and take care of business. But within that, there's the things that you'd still like to see. We'll start with the offensive line. Talked to McCade Matoye or Walter Rouse this week, and both of them spoke about what they kind of termed as a wake-up call kind of performance against SMU. They weren't the offensive line, I don't think, struggled it's not like Dylan Gabriel was on his back all day, but they had some penalties. They were sloppy at times. They didn't. Their goal was to get 5 yards per carry. They didn't hit that, and I think they were pretty self-critical. And the message coming presumably from Bill Bedenbaugh and then through these guys was they've got, against Arkansas State, they've got the strength, the talent, the size to just bully a team and not have their technique be sound and play a bit sloppy. I think they tried it again against SMU and learned their lesson. So that's one place I'll look this week and say, for a group of veteran guys that have talked, they were, term remorse wouldn't be it, but they all came into this week with their heads a bit down, but also about how much better they've got to be. Let's see if they can do that, because this is their last shot before they get into Big 12 play to show something. And I know you noted the line play in kind of our rapid reaction Saturday night, but I think that's a place in a game where, if we want to say going in, you have a sense of what the outcome might be. That's still somewhere I think we need to see something.
Well, I mean, look, you said it, against Arkansas State, the technique didn't have to be good because physically they overmatched. What is Arkansas State now? The Red Wolves, is that right?
The Red Wolves,
Arkansas State,
120-3 through 2 games.
That's not good. That's Butch
Not
Jones
good.
is, that's not a good start for him. But the same is going to be true against Tulsa. Maybe not quite as noticeable. They're going to be physically better than Tulsa, but they are going to be physically better. They're going to have more depth up front. And you're right. It is gonna take the trained eye watching back film to know just what kind of technique they played with and how well they did. But at the same time, if they do play with technique, if they do play nasty, which they've talked about, I think this is a team that they could dominate on the ground, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well. We'll get to another discussion of the running back position, but I do think they're going to try to show early on that they can dominate the line of scrimmage. And quite honestly, Eli, that's something that's so important for a team like Oklahoma, a program like Oklahoma that plans on playing for national championships, is every team, you're going to get their best, right? You're a big name on their schedule. And if you're going to get their best, it's very important that early on in the game, you come out and physically show them that their best is not going to be good enough, right? And we'll see if Oklahoma does that on Saturday. If they do, it should be a pretty straightforward win.
Exhibit A of why line play matters, that Alabama-Texas game.
Yeah.
Not many years you would have seen a Big 12 or a Texas line play overmatch Alabama, but that was more than just Quinn Ewers. That was line play where you saw Texas was a cut above, at least last weekend. Alabama, and for Oklahoma, you look at the line. Last weekend, Savion Byrd gave up the lone sack, and he came right out, and Troy Everett, the App State transfer, came in. Be curious to see what they do there this week, because there's shortcomings, so to speak, for both guys. Savion Byrd, clearly all that talent, but the other night was enough to get him pulled, and we're going to see if he gets the start. Troy Everett, I think, was pretty solid, but I think, you talked to McCade Matoyer about it. He was in this, he was here last year. He saw it last year. Troy Everett's spending most of the week as the second team center, and then he moves into guard on a game day, and he's perfectly capable of playing both spots. But there is a difference, I think, of being in this offense, especially the way it moves and all that in-game communication. So we'll see who they might go with to get the start. I'd imagine they rotate both in, but that's now a fluid part of this line that going into last week we felt pretty good about.
I would say this, and we'll never know the answer. The coaches aren't going to tell us, and we aren't there to watch it as media members, but the answer to that question truly lies in practice this week. To me, this is when, if you don't have a good week of practice out of those two guys especially, but your entire offensive line, you start to have worries. And I would imagine with the amount of leadership that there is, I think both vocal leadership and leadership by example on that line, it's just been spotty, right? Like it feels like it comes and goes. It feels like it ebbs and flows, and they should be more consistently dominant up front. And I think, with some of those veteran guys, with some of those really sharp guys that they have on that offensive line group, they've got to be able to figure this out. And I would imagine this is kind of the come to Jesus week for them.
I think so. And, Jeff Levy said it himself. Like, they had some good drives. It wasn't all bad against SMU. I think those would have been the drives. I think to that one where Tawee Walker came in, I think he had 59 yards on that drive.
Yeah, something like that.
On that scoring drive when they got their second score. That was a good, example of a good drive. It's not all bad. And I think if we were hearing it as willingly from Walter Rouse and McCade Matoyer this week in terms of their feelings about it and what they had to be better with, those conversations are certainly being had, probably more forcefully in that room. You know, we always hear Bill Bedenbaugh's pretty straight and to the point. I got to imagine if he had a tape full of poor technique and sloppiness, he let them know about it. On the other side of the line, defensive line, it's kind of been a story the first 2 weeks. I think in some ways difficult to evaluate because if you ask Brent Venables or Ted Roof, they'll tell you they've faced two offenses that have, gone max protection, not really given them much. They've rushed for, SMU was a game where they did need to kind of protect downfield. They dropped guys in coverage and they gave up some big plays, but they created a bit more pressure. And fact is, though, the sack totals are not, it's not like last year when through 3 games a year ago, they had 13 sacks. They're at 2 through 2 games. You worried? Do you buy just kind of the idea of how they've kind of had to attack each game or a little bit of both?
I think a lot of it has been matchups. And quite frankly, I think you're going to see a lot of the same this Saturday. Like, I don't think Tulsa's just going to protect with 5 and run 7-step drop, right? And plan to protect the quarterback.
Let's see what you can do. I'm with you. I don't think they're going to open up that way.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen this week either. I would say, to me, what's the big positive right now for the defensive line is who's your Walter Camp Defensive Player of the Week this week in college football? It's Danny Stutzman, right? And if a defensive line is truly doing their jobs, it's not always about sack numbers. That's obviously important, but it's also about quarterback hurries, which they've had a few of, and it's about keeping guys off linebackers, right?
Yeah.
And Danny Stutzman, other linebackers have been running to the ball and making plays, and I think that's a big part of why.
I'm with you. And the fact is, if that's the nitpick in a defense that started really, really well, the linebackers have been good. The secondary has been strong. And they have gotten pressure. Like, they're creating things. They're getting good performances. If you just look at the box score, yes, you'll see that the pressures and the hurries are not, and the sacks are not where someone might want. But they look at this in a much deeper way. And I think you're right. Those things will come. They'll play teams that are going to open themselves up a bit more. Todd, you and I are soccer guys. When a team parks the bus, you're not going to see Man City look like Man City.
Right.
When another team comes at them and opens up, that's when they get to do their thing. I think we might not see it, at least until Cincinnati, because I think you're right. Tulsa's going to operate in a similar way. They may not get those chances, but I think it's there. And this sort of takes us into the broader discussion of just the defense on the whole. They have shown improvement, and there are signs that this is bigger than what it was a year ago, which was a complete red herring. Those first 3 weeks, they looked great on defense. They went to Lincoln and throttled Nebraska. So you want to be careful about getting ahead of it. Even interestingly, a guy who wasn't on the team last year, Peyton Bowen, made that point after SMU. We were 3-0 a year ago. We know how quickly this can slip. But the defense looks better, and that's come in part with this defensive line playing, I think, in ways that Brent Venables and Ted Roof are happy, but that a lot of folks in the stands at Owen Field have been frustrated by.
Well, and I don't think it's any coincidence either. Aside from the one touchdown drive for SMU, late in the game they played well too, which I think that also shows you the depth that there is at that position this year as opposed to last season.
It's completely there, and it's, I've had this in a story this week at selloutcrowd.com on the defense separating, fact from fiction. What makes this year different than last September? One of them's the depth. They played 42 guys on defense against Arkansas State. And they didn't play more than 32 in a single game last fall.
They literally could not have played 42 guys. Like you and I would have had to have gotten out there.
I would have liked to have seen that. And the success rate might have only differed so much at certain times. They dropped that number to 26 against SMU. And so that was around their average from a year ago. But it's just the guys they have. I mean, Kip Lewis, was electric at the end of that game. And that was when he replaced Danny Stutzman at points. Danny Stutzman was having one of the finest games I've seen him play for the Sooners, a tackle shy of a career high, and Kip Lewis was in there late in the game and making plays. They did not have a fourth linebacker a year ago. It was Deshaun White, David Guegbu, and Danny Stutzman, the only 3 guys on the roster who played over 900 defensive snaps. And it showed. How many times last year did you see them fade late? The fact that they've got that depth there, that they've got someone like Peyton Bowen, who we're going to get to more on in a bit, in that secondary. They have guys who not only are capable of playing this defense, but within that depth, they can spell other guys and keep this defense fresh. And we saw it in that fourth quarter. I think when Brent Venables says, I don't know if we would have won that game a year ago, that's a big part of it, because the defense that held up while the offense did its job in the fourth quarter, that was huge. And a year ago, they just would not have been that stout late in the game. There's no way.
Well, I mean, they would have lost it because it would have been a close game, and they lost every close game a year ago. So I think that question kind of answers itself, right?
You're exactly right. You hit on the running backs before. Would you expect it 2 weeks in? I guess maybe when we were sitting here talking about Tawee Walker, the starter, week 1, you could have. But the fact is, through 2 games, statistically, there's no question about who the best running back has been at OU. And it kind of presents some interesting questions. I think they're planning to get everyone more involved this week. Sounds like Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk, if there have been injury concerns, are in better shape. But Tawee Walker right now is the standard bearer. Can that continue?
It's kind of that. I mean, it's obviously a different scenario, but it's kind of the Gunner Gundy situation, right? Which is, going into the season, you think, oh, surely this is just because his dad's the coach, or this is just because he had a good off season in Tawee Walker's case. Mm-hmm. Surely this is just to get someone's attention. Gunner Gundy's just playing to make it look like it's a 3 quarterback race, and then he comes out and does well, and you're like, well, you can't take playing time away from him now. And 2 games in, when it's that obvious, not only can you not take time away from him, at this point, I think you've got to start deciding, is this your number 1 guy, right? Is this your go-to back when you need to score a touchdown late in the ball game that you're going to have out there handing the ball to? So I think this is kind of, where the rubber meets the road, and Oklahoma's got to make some decisions on where those carries are going to go, because after this week, I don't see games where there not a lot of games on the schedule where they're going to be able to play 4 guys and give them equal number carries. It's always good to have depth because inevitably a running back's going to get hurt, right? Whether it's for a quarter or for 2 or 3 weeks, that's going to happen. But you've got to decide who your bell cow is, and right now there's no reason to think it shouldn't be Tawee Walker.
Which is pretty hard to believe. If we'd had this conversation last month, I would have called you crazy. I think the depth point's important because so many people are going to focus on who starts and who has the most carries against Tulsa in week 3. Point is, to get to December and to get to where this team wants to go, which is a Big 12 title game, you need at least 4 backs. And I'll give them credit. I doubted their depth at running back all spring, all summer. They didn't really add in the portal. And I just thought that going with 2 sophomore running backs, Marcus Major, who's never been able to stay on the field and have a productive full season at OU, and walk on Tawee Walker, I didn't think that was enough because I thought you were going to lean too hard on 2 second-year backs, lean too hard on Marcus Major, and really have nothing else to go for it. Right now, the depth is there because Tawee Walker has shown up, because Marcus Major was making plays in the passing game last week, and I think every OU fan, and some more than others, some really feel like they need to be out there starting, but the Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes will come good. So that's, I think, the good news if you're an OU fan, no matter what. If you're worried about who's starting the game, that's a separate issue. They seem to have 4 running backs they like, and that is what will get them, or will help get them where they want to go at the end of the season. But right now, until Marcus Major is more productive out of the backfield, and same for the 2 second-year running backs who combined for 3 carries last week, we can talk about where they'll be in November. Right now, Tawee Walker's the guy. I mean, here's the stats from the other night. 21 carries for 117 yards for Tawee Walker. The rest of the OU running backs, 15 for 56. There's just the running game was stuck in the mud until Tawee took over.
Right.
And so I'll be curious to see what they do this week. I think it's going to be a good chance, even if it's not indicative of what they'll do against Cincinnati, to get Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk kind of up to game speed because they haven't really featured all that much. I mean, Barnes led them in carries in week 1, hardly ran last week, and Sawchuk we've seen very little of. They do need to get going and get those guys going. So I think we'll see that, and you glean that from what Jeff Lebby had to say this week. But right now, I think it's Tawee's backfield, which is hard to believe. Would have been hard to believe. Barry Trammell yesterday asked Brent Venables, is it possible that your best running back is walk-on Tawee Walker? And there was no objection. So we're going to find out.
Well, and I would just say with Tawee Walker, like, this is an interesting case study on what you are as a fan or what you are as just an observer, because I think there are 2 ways to look at it. And one is there's going to be a fan out there that's going to say, oh, God, if Tawee Walker, the walk-on, is our running back, then obviously the running back room's got issues. And then there's going to be a fan that goes, good for Tawee Walker. Maybe Oklahoma found a diamond in the rough, right? And it only makes the running back room better. So I think it's just kind of a case-by-case basis on how people feel about it. But from my perspective, we said this before the season started, He's got the opportunity, make the best out of it, and he's done that and some.
Well, you're right. There are folks who will say, why are our 2 4-star sophomores who were really promising a year ago not playing? Surely there's a reason. Surely they're not wanting to keep a lid on those guys if they've got, if either one of them was going to be a 100-yard rusher the last 2 weeks, they would have been playing. Fact is, they weren't. And Tawee Walker's bringing something they don't have. He's hard to take down. He's like a little bowling ball, and they need that. And again, ideally, they'll have that, and they'll have Javonte Barnes doing what he does well, and Gavin Sawchuk doing what he does well, and same for Marcus Major. But right now, and it's just been 2 games, and it's almost, you look at the numbers from the Arkansas State game, especially with the run game, and you don't even really want to make any judgments off of it. But if that's the case, then you look at SMU, and far and away, there was one guy who was productive out of the backfield, and it wasn't either of the 4-star sophomores, and it wasn't Marcus Major.
I will just say real quickly, it will be interesting because I think Tawee, the way he runs, makes up for some of the offensive line deficiencies. And I think if the offensive line blocks up the run game better, Barnes and Sawchuk are going to give you more explosiveness. So, if I think maybe as the offensive line plays better, it will unlock some of those guys as well. And maybe Tawee will fall into a role of being a guy that you can bring in, always rely on, but also some short yardage roles as well.
So jumping into an injury report for this week, that'll kind of segue us into some talk about the 2 big freshmen. Gentry Williams expected to play, kind of got banged up last week, returned in limited action. He's going to be a captain in Tulsa, which I think is a pretty dang cool thing. His hometown, cool. Booker T grad, him and Garen Emig, a couple of Hornets, cutting it up. And but the Cheetah spot is a place to watch because Justin Harrington was injured in that game. He played through it, but had a wrap on his knee. Brent Venables said he's still banged up yesterday. Dasan McCullough dressed, didn't warm up, didn't play. He's got that ankle injury. It sounds like Dasan, they're kind of hopeful will be back. Justin Harrington, if you kind of follow what they did with Dasan last week, you might say if it's even close, they're just not going to play him because it's early in the season for that. But where that intrigues me is what that could set up for Peyton Bowen, who I think you're never not going to be talking about 5-star freshmen when they're playing as often as he is, but he's genuinely impressed. He looks nothing like a freshman off the bat. And I think Saturday there's a good chance you'll see him getting even more snaps at the Cheetah spot. He's played all over the secondary. He's made plays everywhere, special teams at the block punt last week. He had a pass breakup. He did have that pass interference in the red zone, but he more than made up for it in his performance.
Well, that's just because the Big 12 hates OU.
Well, right. That's what I got texted to me by several friends Saturday night, who I then told I'd actually seen Brett Yormark exchanging cash straight up with the refs pregame. It's unbelievable how big it is, right?
Love that.
The Big 12 refs have for OU football. Goodness. I can't stand referee talk. Can't stand it. But
no, me neither. But to your Peyton Bowen point, though, he's been amazing. Like, I love what Ted Roof said about him, which is he's just I'm paraphrasing. I don't know that I have the exact quote in front of me. He's just a guy that gets football. Like, it just comes easy to him. You just put him out there, and he likes making plays, and he knows how to do it, right? And those type of guys that you just can't coach are so important. If they're going to come in and play immediately in a Brent Venables system, it's tough enough to play a position. We're talking about a guy who's been all around the secondary now, who I think we'll probably see on Saturday, just kind of from talking to people, and you would know better than I think we're going to see him play that Cheetah position, so another position you can add to the list that you're going to see him out there getting a decent amount of snaps. And look, if he can do those things, we're talking about a guy who is going to be very vital. If there's one thing that Brent Venables loves, and this – I mean, Isaiah Simmons is the number one example of it. He loves a guy that can be someone that you move and can do multiple things for you defensively, right? I mean, it's such a big thing on offensive football. If you've got players out there and you don't have to sub and you can run 3 receivers and 2 backs or empty backfield with those same players, that's hard to scheme up defensively. It's the same defensively. If you can have a guy out there that you can move in and help you in run protection, but you can also trust that he can one-on-one defend somebody in the secondary, I mean, that's priceless. So I think Peyton Bowen is the exact prototype of the type of player that Brent Venables wants in that secondary. And that's why, going back to when he flipped and decided he was going to come to Oklahoma, that's why that was such a big deal. And I think that was a big deal within that staff because they kind of knew that he might be that guy. I didn't expect to see it this early. I'll say that right from the jump. and it's obviously going to get tougher in conference play. But so far, so good for him.
Your movie guy, Todd?
Yes and no.
Everything everywhere all at once.
Haven't seen that one yet.
Well,
But that is his experience at OU so far, isn't it?
Well, that's what I think. That's what Isaiah Simmons was. That's what the ideal cheetah does in this defense. And whether it'll be Peyton Bowen this weekend or this season or long term at cheetah or any of the other safety spots, he can be that guy. He can be everything everywhere all at once for this defense. And that's why he's already been important. That's why he'll be certainly important if you want to project down the next few years. But that Ted Roof quote, I do have the exact quote in front of me. Seasoned journalist here.
What a guy.
Not so much. But we've learned that football really makes sense to him. And it's like a simple sentence, but it encapsulates the whole thing. He just kind of gets the game. And he talked to us in fall camp about playing in 5 different positions in practices. You'd think a kid's head would be spinning. He's 18, maybe 19, freshman. He was here in the spring, but it's early for him. He's doing it all, and it's helping him in every different spot. He kind of explained that the more he's played everywhere else, when he's in, let's say he's playing free safety on a given play, he knows what everyone else is supposed to be doing because he's played those spots. He's kind of
and that's not only good because he knows where to be, but he can literally tell somebody what to do. I mean, that's important in situations, especially like last week where SMU is trying to get snaps quick at times.
Yep. And he's been on campus 9 months, and so here are the numbers. He's got the 10 most snaps of any OU defender through 2 games. In coverage, 3 catches for 19 yards on 4 targets. He's played 15 snaps in the box, kind of in that cheetah role, 34 at free safety, and 14 in the slot. He really has been all over. They're getting good use out of him. And I think he's going to be big this weekend, especially if Justin Harrington's not playing. And he's going to be important for them moving forward, which, again, I think we had high expectations, but not quite like this so fast for him.
Right. He's been great.
Another Denton Guyer kid, Jackson Arnold. We probably saw more of him Saturday than many of us would have expected against SMU. And I think we're going to see more of him going forward than maybe we would have expected in that short yardage package.
I agree. I mean, I think basically what Jackson Arnold is doing is a lot of the same stuff that Jeff Lebby schemed up last year with Braden Willis, right? Back there in that Wildcat look. I think it's a lot of those same types of things. Just now you have a guy who can raise up and throw a pass. And, if that happens, you're looking at maybe hitting somebody for a big play. That wrinkle's always going to be there. It'll be interesting to see when they use it. And, I mean, let's be honest. It does 2 things for you. Number one, it gives you a little power run game out of a shotgun, which you don't have handing the ball off horizontally to a running back, right? I mean, you've got somebody running downhill now. He's got blockers in front of him. It's harder to have that short yardage run game out of a shotgun, which Oklahoma is way more comfortable in. Number 2, it takes out any opportunity to get Dylan Gabriel hurt on a short yardage type play, right? I mean, so I think both of those things are going to get him more playing time. And I don't think it's a bad thing at all. Like I think it's perfectly normal to have that type of package put in. The only thing you worry about is if Jackson Arnold gets hurt, you don't have a backup. But hell, Eli, if Jackson Arnold and Dylan Gabriel both get hurt, let's be honest, not very many teams could lose their first 2 quarterbacks and have a successful season anyway, right? At that point, you're kind of snake bit. So I love it. I think we'll see more of it as the season goes on. It will be interesting, though, to watch like what kind of wrinkles there are, especially when the ball's in the middle of the field on short yardages. And if they get really good at it, we've seen this at all levels of football. If you can make a 4th and 1 and feel like it's a 90-95% opportunity, you'll go for 4th and 1 at your own 40 or at your own 35, right? And that helps you offensively keep drives alive. And I think that's the type of guy that, in that formation, you could do that with a lot.
You remember Red River last year, OU Texas?
Yep.
That's what it looks like when Dylan Gabriel and Jackson Arnold are not playing. That's what it'll look like.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So to that point, but you're right. I mean,
I remember the first half, Eli. I literally went outside and just started eating fair food in the second half. I'm dead serious. And I had a press pass. Probably shouldn't have done that.
I don't care how the game's going. Let's just go eat fair food at halftime.
Do you want to hear a real quick good OU Texas story?
Yeah.
I think we might be – I think I've told this on the radio before, so I think I can do it. One year I was working as a producer on a radio show that Barry Trammell was on, our colleague, and I was looking for OU Texas tickets, and Barry called me day of game, and he goes, "Hey, meet me over by this gate." And I thought, oh, maybe he got a good deal on some tickets. I told him about what I wanted to spend. They were really expensive. So I go over, and he goes, "Don't say a word about this. Just get in. You can go sit wherever you can sit." And he gave me a press pass that may or may not have had a name of one of our other colleagues on it.
Wowza.
So I thought about like making my name Benny Carlson or, Denny Carlson, but,
Man, I hope the folks, whoever runs credentialing, I hope they're
I
not
know
because we're in trouble now.
that really didn't happen. I made that.
Barry Trammell.
I made that whole thing up.
That's quite a tag. I got Barry Trammell banned from Red River and from the college.
No, I would never do that.
I don't know. Garen and I were talking on the last episode here about how quickly they'd cancel the show. This might do it.
Well, I mean,
be a good run while it lasted.
I'm sorry if that happens.
Well, back to Jackson Arnold.
I think we're good. I think we're good on that.
I think we're safe. Statute of limitations on that's got to be.
I mean, it was literally. I mean, seriously, it might have been 03. So I think we're good. If we can tell the story of Mike Leach leaving the play sheet on the field, we can tell that story, right?
I think so.
Okay, good.
Jackson
he would
Arnold,
never do that now, for the record.
Just closing out on him, I think you said it does two things for them right now, and I think it does. There's another sense of looking at it that way. It gives them a short yardage quarterback and someone they feel good running the ball. It's also given the guy who we all know is going to be the guy moving forward beyond this season, a quarterback, opportunities to get hit early, opportunities to be out there, to be calling plays in pressure situations. I think that's really important. And I've got these quotes in front of me. I'm working on something on Jackson right now of what Brent Venables and Jeff Levy have said about they've got a plan for him. They're not just throwing him out there. Right. And they've got a plan for him that's, multi-year, where they see this going in the future. They see him as the future of this program. And this is part of step one. And I think that it can't be understated. If he's going to be running these plays in Big 12 games, in big environments, big situations, what that will do for him in moving him along by the time he is the starting quarterback. I will say they hit pretty well on the success rate with these short yardage situations. That 4th and 1 in the red zone. You said before, maybe the reality is they don't have someone they feel good about like a year ago to hand it off to Eric Gray, or Braden Willis would have been great in one of those moments. I do wonder, did they get too cute? Surely they've got other plays with Dylan Gabriel under center to run a misdirection, get a guy open or hand the ball off. That raised my eyebrows, and that was a big moment. If they could have scored there, that game turns earlier than it did. But on the whole, I think it gives OU a new dimension in the run game on short yardage, and it gives them a chance. If Dylan Gabriel is going to be the starting quarterback, but to get Jackson Arnold out there, I think that's huge.
You guys have talked to Jackson Arnold, haven't you?
Yeah, we have.
Okay, and I would imagine that I would imagine that you probably got this feeling, and you probably get it from being around the program. Not only do they have a plan for him, but it seems like he's in on the plan, like he has bought in on it, right? Which I think is an important part, and that goes all the way back to his recruitment, how early he bought in on Oklahoma and stayed with them throughout some of the tough times last season.
He's known this was the place he wanted to be for a very long time. He knew he wanted to be with Jeff Levy, and he's known the role he was stepping into. I was sitting with him the week before signing day last year in Denton Guyer, and he was just so excited to get there, to start learning the system, to sit behind Dylan Gabriel, to learn from him. So this is all according to plan, both for him and for the program. So I think early encouraging signs, and I think we're going to see more of it, and that's going to be fun. You mentioned him, maybe breaking out a pass in one of those situations. That sounds fun to me. And that to me sounds, the misdirection of that, bring him in, have him stand over the center, and then send somebody out and go for a big play on a 4th down. That to me is what that looks like in a perfect situation.
It'll surprise the defender, the defense so much so it'll remind you of Matt McCoy to Chris Chester at Faroe Field back in the day.
Love it. Oh well, come on.
Sorry. I had to bust out a Missouri reference. I'm sorry.
Yeah, take a second. All right, we're gonna close out here with a little bit of Big 12 college football talk, and then a game of Lis-in, Lis-out. Couldn't let you add here without one. But we'll go quick. You put out a great stat on the Big 12 last weekend about Baylor and Tech. Let's hear it.
So only one other time in conference history have multiple teams started the regular season 0-2 in the Big 12. That was the first year of the conference in 1996. Unfortunately, for Oklahoma fans, you were one of those teams that started 0-2 that year. But the best finish ever for any team that started 0-2 was Texas A&M, who went 6-6 that year. They played in the Kickoff Classic, so they got the extra 12th game. But no team has ever made a bowl game out of the Big 12 after starting 0-2 in the regular season. Now, in fairness to Texas Tech, no team's gone to Wyoming and then played a top 15 team at home in the next game either. So it's a little bit of a skewed stat, but still, I think there is worry for the Red Raiders. I think I came out of that game a little bit more impressed with Oregon than I did upset with Texas Tech. I think it's a little bit opposite with Utah, right? I was more unimpressed by Utah and I guess more, kind of on the same spot, I think, with Baylor. I still think Texas Tech's going to get to a bowl game, but it's an interesting spot they find themselves in right now.
I think if I had to pick one of those teams, I would lean Tech. I mean, they've played 2 tough games. They played Oregon pretty well on the whole. I didn't get to see all that game, but they hung with them. So if I had to pick one of those teams to get to 6 wins, it would be Tech. Baylor just has the feel of a season that could go pretty fast here. It's not like Texas State was one thing, but Utah coming to Waco, it's not an easy game. Both of them scheduled difficult Pac-12 opponents, and I think the Pac-12 might be as good a conference as any right now. I mean, 8 teams ranked in the top 25 this week. But I would back Tech to maybe make some progress there. Baylor, I don't know the quarterback situation. I don't know that the recruiting has really followed that Big 12 title a couple of years ago. So I've got my questions there. Is Texas back, Todd?
I mean, I'd have to say yes, right? I mean, it doesn't get much more back than winning at Alabama.
Doesn't.
Now, in true Texas form, I could totally see them losing a home game to Baylor or something. I don't even know if Baylor's on their schedule, but later in the year, I could see that happening, or them going down to Houston and losing, right? Like, I could see one of those random things happening for them, but, I mean, the Longhorns deserve a ton of credit for what they did at Bryant-Denny Stadium. It wasn't even as close as what the final score said. They completely physically dominated that game, which, hand up, I was wrong on that one. My prediction for the game was that physically Texas couldn't hang, and they not only hung with Bama, they dominated the Tide.
They sucked the life out of that game. I mean, they had the football for the last 7-something, and they just ran it out. And that's where that shows up. That wasn't about the play calling or the run game necessarily. That was about at the line of scrimmage who was winning. And Texas, on a night, it was very different from a lot of nights under Nick Saban and Tuscaloosa, just got manhandled. I'll say this. That can't be the high of Texas's season. That's where, when we talk about is Texas back, we've seen them have big wins before. Maybe none bigger than this. I'm not diminishing that, but they've now got to go do it the rest of the way. Because if
the culture changes, you win the games that you're supposed to win, and that's what Texas hasn't done over the last decade and a half.
I've said it. I'll say it, I guess, until he gets to 10 wins. No Sark-led team has, with him at the helm, has gotten to beyond 9 wins before. We'll see if they can do it. Todd, we're going to finish with Lis-in or Lis-out. I do have a question, though. I heard you've got some variation of this game that you've stripped for your own podcast. That's what I've been told.
I have.
I heard you got some game that's strikingly similar to Lis-in or Lis-out.
The only game I have is I did ask John Hamm the other day if he was ham in or ham out. But I did give you credit for coming up with the idea. And really, I think the game that people loved more with John Hamm and I was named that random 90s NBA guy.
Love that. Concac.
John Concac, an SMU Mustang legend.
Go hear about John Concac in the year 2023.
Well, that's easy. You go to the Todd Pod on YouTube. You subscribe. You like. I think the kids say smash the like button. You do all those things.
Wow. Well, you're off the hook. You can take Lis-in, Lis-out. I don't know.
I'll take it.
Not yet, at least, copyrighted and mired in intellectual property stuff.
Rapid fire. Let's go.
Let's do it. Sooners by 26 at Tulsa. You Lis-in or Lis-out? Can they beat that spread?
I'm going to say Lis-out only because I'm playing the numbers. OU's covered the first 2 games. I'm going to guess this is the one game they don't cover, but I still think they win very easily.
Jackson Arnold over 5 carries against Tulsa.
I'm going to say Lis-in because I think he gets into the game in the second half and they feature him in the run game when he's out there as the full-time quarterback replacing Dylan Gabriel.
I'm with you there. Broad strokes, this Sooners defense, is it real? Lis-in, Lis-out on that.
Oh, God. I mean, I said Lis-in after the Nebraska game last year, and that was, like you said earlier, the ultimate red herring. I'm going to say Lis-in. I don't think it's a great defense yet, but I think it's much improved from last year. I think it's going to lead to a better overall record this season, and there's certainly a lot more depth. So if they stay healthy, I'm Lis-in on the defense right now.
Tawee Walker to lead all OU rushers in week 3. Lis-in or Lis-out?
In yards or carries?
Yards.
Ooh, I'm going to say Lis-out on this one. I think with some of the things we're hearing from the offensive line, I think this might be the first game where we see Oklahoma break off a big run or two, and I'm going to say that the guys breaking off those big runs are either Barnes or Sawchuk.
I like it. All right. Hold on, I'm getting caught up here. All right, Jim Harbaugh during Michigan's 35-7 win over UNLV. Nice. Solidarity. Free Harbaugh. Very nice. Self-imposed ban. Let's wear T-shirts for him. He said he spent that game, he mowed that day, mowed the front lawn before the game, went to McDonald's with the kids at halftime, and then mowed the back lawn after the game and called it a productive day. You Lis-in or Lis-out on just that afternoon that Jim Harbaugh had?
I'm old. That sounds like a great afternoon to me. I'd imagine he has a riding mower, and I would imagine he doesn't have to do the weed eating. He probably hires someone for that. So he just rode around like Forrest Gump for a while, and if you get the right tunes going, then yeah, I'm Lis-in on that. I love turning on some old 90s rap and just hanging on the mower for a while.
He's probably got a great riding mower. He's probably also got a lot of real estate, I'd imagine, to mow.
Yep.
But to your point, I wonder what he's really – he might just be riding around on there.
His cup of milk in the cup holder's got grass shavings all in it, and he just drinks it anyway.
All right. I asked you about Texas. Lis-in or Lis-out on them being your Big 12 champs after 2 weeks. This is exactly the time to be making bold, sweeping.
Oh, yeah. After 2 weeks and 0 conference games, I am Lis-in on Texas. Of course, I was before the season. So, I didn't think Texas would go to Bama and win, but we talked before the season. I thought they were the team to beat in the Big 12. So, it's hard to not say that you're Lis-in on Texas winning the Big 12 in this moment right now.
The Week 4 schedule across the country looks awesome in terms of good matchups. Week 3, not a single ranked head-to-head game. So we're going to go here. Kansas State, -5 at Missouri. You Lis-in or Lis-out on the Wildcats there?
Please don't hate me, Eli, but I had John Kurtz, who's a K-State grad and has a YouTube channel on, and we were talking about that game. And I said, Bill Snyder used to always schedule all these patsies. They play 3 easy games in non-conference, and I thought K-State got away from that. And now here they are playing Southeast Missouri, Troy, and Missouri. I'm Lis-in on the Wildcats. I think they're underrated. I think they're going to win by a couple touchdowns this week.
I think they're great. I've got a group chat, Todd, that I'm in, fellow Missouri grads, who, when I came out of that press conference Saturday night after the SMU game, it ended right around when that Missouri game ended. If this one goes south, there's going to be a whole lot more energy against Eli Drinkwitz because there's already money there. We'll see. All right, we're going to Tulsa this weekend, or at least I'm going to Tulsa this weekend. The Coney Islander, you Lis-in, Lis-out?
It's my favorite place in the world. Come on. I could smash probably 10 Coneys right now. I would pay for it later, and I would gladly pay for it later. They are the best. Coney Islander, my grandparents lived in Owasso, and we'd go up there as a kid, and that was like the stop on the way home. We'd go to Coney Islander, and because we always stopped and got it to go, I have this thing now. I can only eat. I don't think I've ever ate inside at a Coney Islander. So, like, literally, there used to be, I don't know if it's still there, there used to be one kind of across from Chapman Stadium, and when I would cover, like, Jinx Union games, I'd go park there, go inside, get the 3 Coneys, no onions, I'm out on onions, and then I'd walk outside, and I would stand by my car and eat the Coneys just because it felt more normal that way. So I'm all in on Coney Islander. Their tamales are underrated, too, if you ever get a chance to try them.
What a lovely, sweet little anecdote we uncovered there.
Coney Islander, if you want to be a sponsor of the Todd Pod, get in touch with the people at Sellout Crowd. We can make that happen.
There we go. All right, last 2. OKC Arena plan that was released this week. Lis-in or Lis-out?
Liz political answer, I don't live in Oklahoma City, so it doesn't really matter. That's what I'm going to say, not to make anybody mad. I will just say this. There's no doubt that the city needs it. There's no doubt they have to have it to keep up. But also, in comparison to how much the stadium costs, the $50 million that the team is going to pay, when you kind of look at other stadiums recently, it seems like a pretty low number. So it's going to happen. I'm Lis-in on getting a new arena. We can fight about all the details, but they need one.
I think two things are true and can be true at the same time. One, pro sports teams and the public subsidies they get to build their arenas, they could be throwing in a whole lot more. Two, Oklahoma City cannot afford to lose its NBA team.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate outcome here. And as you said, the details there, we can haggle over those until this thing's built. But as long as the Thunder are here, I think it's all worthwhile. Final one, UCO over Missouri Western this week. You'll be there on the call. Where can people find you first? Where can people listen to you on Saturday?
Well, you can listen to that on KOKC. You can also watch it on the MIAA network. It's a subscription thing, but you can watch, I think it's like $10.99 or maybe $19.99 a month. But you can watch all UCO athletics all year, basketball, football, everything for that. So, we're on KOKC Radio, which is AM 1520 in Oklahoma City, or on the iHeartRadio app, all that stuff. It's pretty simple. But I'm going to say obviously I'm Lis-in on the Broncos winning. UCO's big problem the last couple years under new head coach Adam Durrell last year and then the first two games this year is having a hard time winning on the road. They make a lot of mistakes on the road. This game is coming back home after another one of those bad losses on the road. So I think they get it done against the Griffins of Missouri Western, which, by the way, it's a great little tie-in. Missouri Western University is where, in St. Joseph, is where the Kansas City Chiefs have their training camp. And in I think it's the north end zone of Missouri Western's field, is the Bill Snyder Family Pavilion. And I'm pretty sure Bill Snyder was either a grad there or maybe his daughter was or something, but there's a giant pavilion there named after longtime Kansas State coach Bill Snyder.
Learn something new every day.
The more you know.
Todd. Well, and you'll be back, I hope. Let's hope. I'll bring you back. You'll come back.
If Barry Trammell doesn't kill me first.
Hey, I don't know. You divulged something there that I would not have admitted readily myself. But that is going to do it on the 6th episode of Letterman Jacket Pod. You can find us as always, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Todd will be back. Sooners will do their thing this weekend, and you'll be able to have all of our coverage at selloutcrowd.com. And we'll be back with more episodes next week.